right in. It just stopped.
Month, hasn't it? Well, as you can see, I'm not in the button screen anymore. The court let me go to normal school now. So I moved to Yegenberg. I bought me an apartment here. My first day at my new school is tomorrow, basically. Let me show you around my new apartment, yo. The still lounge room, as you can see, the balcony outside. Then table, kitchen. Then the spare bedroom. 2 beds in the spare bedroom. My bedroom. Gang, you heard. Then the bathroom. Let's go out and chill on the balcony, yo. Why not come, right? Okay, press play.
After 15 minutes of running, things started to look familiar. I ran down a massive hill, and the trees started to become much more open and brighter. I slowed down and began to walk, too terrified to check behind me. Once the feeling of impending doom settled, I finally mustered the strength to turn around. The moment I turned around is a moment I will never forget. I turned behind me and through the trees and saw my house, as if I had been running away from it the entire time. Thinking that I must have just gotten turned around and was absolutely hating the idea of running back into the forest, I walked towards the house. As I was probably 100 meters from it, I heard a spine-chilling shriek emanating from the forest behind me, similar to the sound of a mountain lion screaming, or raccoons fighting, but it was far louder, and seemed to be coming from not just one place, but many at once. I sprinted the final steps to my house and did not turn back. As soon as I entered the house, I came face to face with my father, who was sitting at the kitchen table. I looked at the clock on the wall and saw it was 4:45 p.m. I have no idea what happened in the 5 hours between the time the photo was taken and the time I got home. All that I remember is it took me roughly 30 minutes to get in and 20 to get out. I went right into my room and stared at the photo on my phone, assuring myself it had happened, and that I had seen what I'd seen. This was almost 5 years ago. I still find myself looking at the photo to show myself it happened, and I didn't just go mad. After that day, I decided that I would not venture out into the forest alone, and started a new character on Skyrim to assure I wouldn't want to go outside even if the internet was down. My parents moved out of their house this past summer and into the city. I still love going outside and even found myself working in isolation camps in the middle of the Rockies this past summer. Yet I could not go alone outside or past the calling range of a friend. I have no idea what occurred that summer. Nothing paranormal has ever happened to me before or since that date. Growing up, I had a neighbor who spent as much time with me as my own family. He also had a son a few years younger than myself, and we were all friends. They lived across the road from us. Behind their house was a heavily wooded ridge with an overgrown road going partially up it. At the end of this road was an old mobile home trailer from the 60s or 70s. It was captured by my neighbor's father, who was a state trooper during a drug raid, and was used as a hunting cabin for many years. At the time of this story, it was in a horrible state of repair, and by no means was probably safe to be in. My neighbor was utilizing it to store random stuff. So one night, I was over at their house as usual, and myself plus my neighbor's son was starting to get bored. At this point it was around 2 a.m. We decided to take the walk up to the trailer and sit there for a bit. So we gathered a flashlight and a small lantern, then headed up. At first things were uneventful. There was a light mist and rain, and it was a bit chilly but not that bad. We sat in the trailer amidst stored items in the decay of the place with the lantern for about 20 minutes just hanging out and talking. We were discussing leaving when we heard footsteps outside. I have grown up in the woods, and the cadence or rhythm of steps people tend to make compared to animals is noticeable. These were human and heavy. We had heard nothing come up, nor had we seen anything on our way. At this point, it made its way to the door of the trailer and stopped outside. We called and asked who was there, but there was nothing. No steps, no rustling, nothing. I, at least, had no inclination to be trapped there by anyone or anything, and picked up a rather heavy metal rod that happened to be there, and we whispered a plan. After a second, I kicked the door open with enough force to slam it against the trailer, and almost shut it again while my friend shone the light out. There was nothing there. No sounds of running, nothing at all. We gathered all our courage, hopped out and looked around for a minute. Still nothing to see nor hear. No footprints, no anything. We decided it was best at this point to take our asses back to the house, to which we did. We still didn't see or hear anything on the way back. And I don't know for sure what it was that we saw that night exactly. This story happened back in the late 70s, in Samarinda, Borneo, Indonesia. My dad used to work in a lumber mill there, doing lumber mill related work. He told me that this one time, there was a crowd of people gathered around what appeared to be a makeshift cage made by the locals. When he got a look at what was in there, as it was crowded by lots of people, he was surprised and shocked to see a big primate creature standing upright, about 2 meters tall. The hair of the primate was similar to that of an orangutan, and what is even weirder is the primate creature appeared to be crying. So how did the ape end up in there, you may ask? My father asked a local about it, and one of them said that one day a man from the nearby village was missing when hunting. So, of course, the villagers go to the forest in order to try and find him. But during the search, one of them found a huge footstep that was so large it simply couldn't be human. So they split into smaller parties to follow the track, and to their surprise, the missing guy was found on a tall tree, tied up in what appeared to be a nest of primates. So they helped him down, and that's when he told them that he had been taken by an upright standing ape. The villagers got curious, so the next day formed another search party to search for the ape instead. No one really knows how, but my dad said they found it, and that's how it wound up in that cage. My dad doesn't know what happened to the ape, but some of his colleagues said the villagers actually ended its life to avoid many more potential victims of being taken. The primate creature was allegedly female. The villagers speculated that it took the hunter to make a bride out of him. And that's the end of the story. I know this isn't a usual Bigfoot story, but I still found it compelling. I had to share it with you guys. This all started 2 years ago, in the beginning of October 2018. My dad and I went camping in southern Ohio. I was 34 and my dad was 58 at the time. We went over to my grandma's house because she has a lot of secluded woods and basically lives in the middle of nowhere. The area has had a history of religious practices by the Hopewell Indians and occultism by certain groups who go into the woods on certain dates and perform ceremonies, but I thought nothing of it. These ceremonies have been witnessed by my cousin while hunting and by my grandparents for years now. I parked my car and my dad and I began carrying all the camping equipment to the deep woods. We ended up walking 3 to 4 miles back and finally found a spot to settle in and pitch the tent. After an hour or so, we decided to move from that spot to the top of the fairly large hill to have a better view, and I feared it might rain and didn't bring the top to cover my tent properly to keep the rain out. As we walked to the top, we ended up running into an 1800s-style cabin, standing, but had no doors, no windows. The roof was intact, and it did have all 4 walls and a roof. I've seen this cabin many times, as it is along a trail through the woods near my grandma's property, and this was the worst mistake we could have ever made during this trip. I had all my camping gear and food lined up on some old wooden benches, in which the cabin had 2 benches in total. It was around 7:30 when we set up our tent and other things. We could hear cars echoing off the hills when they would drive by, and we were about 3 to 4 miles to the nearest exit of the woods, and there was no one around in any direction, and there are a few people who live out in this part of Ohio. After an hour to hour and a half of being out there, at around 8:30 to 9, I start to hear these...
Pause it. Hit the bed, you know the rules were shit. Walk it. There you are. Gang, you heard. My first day at my normal school, not boarding school anymore. See you guys in the morning. 5 in the morning, yo. Head to school, yo. Why not? Gang. Unlock it. Lock it back up. Lock it, there you are. Head down, yo. Head down. I'll see you guys when I'm at school, I guess. See you then. Here we are. The school, yo. Okay, my first class for the day should be down here. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, here. Good morning, class. Today you won 10 reps. Go. Well, I'll see you when I'm done with it. And... okay, class dismissed. Cool. Second class for the day should be up here. Should be this class here. Good morning, class. Today with a new student, introduce yourself. So why not? Hey everyone, my name is Isaac. I'm 15. I'm new to this school. That's all you have to know about me. I'm gonna go sit down. Class dismissed. Cool. My last class for the day until the afternoon is this class here. Good morning, class. Okay, class dismissed. Have fun at break. Yo. Gang, you heard. It's break time. Let's go chill here. Oh, it's small. I'm gonna check what's this one, yo. Okay. Cool. What about here? What's through? Okay, cool, Sarah. Let's go chill over here. So we know the door is open so they would smell it. Saffron tree, no saffron tree. Remember rock, they would also smell it in here. So I have no choice but to go outside the front tree and smoke somewhere. Gang. Let's go chill here, yo. Actually, no, let's go chill around the back of the school, yo. Why not? Here. Here we are, yo. Press play.
Faint whispers in the corner of the cabin which caught me off guard.
A bunk for
I was a
day,
little
yo.
disturbed, to say the least. I asked my dad if he hears the whispering as well, and he says, yes. As I'm sitting there trying to figure out where these sounds are coming from exactly, looking in the direction I hear them, I see nothing. had a few flashlights with us as well, and I could see nothing. They eventually stopped, after 15 to 20 minutes. As Dad and I were laying there all of a sudden, a large cat walked into our space from the outside and sat right next to our tent. I can hear this large cat because it began purring with a very deep tone, as mountain lions would stand about a foot from us. I'm lying petrified in my tent, as well as my dad, who's just listening to this cat, and as it walked to us, it hit the top of my head, as I'm tall, 6'2", and the tent wasn't quite big enough. To remind you, I'm an avid outdoorsman and hunt and have fished. I've never experienced something like this camping in Ohio. I've camped all over the US and have lived in places including Minnesota, North Dakota, Idaho, but originally from Ohio. I also have no weapons with me because in Ohio I never had an issue. As we lay there, I began to sit up with my flashlight to see this cat. But I see nothing and it continues to purr deeply. I saw a shadow outside as we had light in the top middle of our tent, so it should have cast a shadow when it walked nearby. I know for a fact it wasn't a bobcat, which Ohio has. Its purring was much too powerful sounding to be a cat log that size. As I'm sitting up in the tent, the cat begins pummeling my food and bottles of Mountain Dew that I'd put on the benches, and then shortly after sounded like a jump from one of the windows. I sat there in amazement over this and could not understand what just happened. To my surprise, it only got much worse. Not long after the cat left, we then began to hear leaves ruffling and a bipedal creature over and over again throughout the night with large limbs and trees breaking and small rocks being thrown out the cut-out windows. I got my flashlight and shined it towards the ruffling of the leaves, but the strange thing was you could not see a physical creature in the direction of the sound nor the limbs breaking. These same patterns of leaves and branches breaking continued over and over again. I went back to my tent dumbfounded, and soon after my dad and I heard 2- and 4-legged creatures start to run around the cabin, making all kind of ungodly sounds, lasting at least 5 to 10 minutes. Then out of nowhere, one of these creatures starts beating on the side of the cabin, hitting it twice with a thundering noise. My hair started to stand on end. I was in utter shock, along with my dad. These same patterns of sounds lasted 8 hours, before we eventually packed a few things and decided to run for it. Before we left, the beating of the cabin grew louder with each hit. The last hit of the cabin before we decided to leave was around 4 a.m. It was so loud I thought I was going to be deaf from it. I can only describe this sound as a large 12-gauge shotgun, 3.5-inch buckshot loaded in it, and shot in a close proximity to hear the sound. As we got up to leave, we had our flashlights on, standing back to back, walking out, and everything went silent all around us. As we got so far on the trail, we began running along until we reached a valley in the woods, and we stopped, because just to the right of us stood this creature. It was so dark in the woods, even with a flashlight, that you could see this creature standing on a small hill, looking down on us with yellow eyes set pretty far apart from each other, and it appeared from our distance to be at least 7 foot tall. If I had to guess, the outline was massive, you see. It seemed like this thing was absorbing the light shined on it. It literally just stood there, never moving, never wavering while we stared. We decided to keep running until we got out the woods and off the trail, which still had 2 to 3 miles to go. We made it out the woods without further encounters or incidences, but it didn't end there. As we got to the road, we started walking towards my grandma, where we were parked with my SUV, and right in front of us was a bridge that's very small in size where a creek runs through. As we got off the bridge, in the distance we saw the same yellow eyes and shined my flashlight on it, but it took off running into the side of small woods. Soon after it ran into the woods, we heard an owl hooting a few times, and right after the hooting sound, we heard a loud, deep
You cool with Italy not being there, mate? Shit, really? Say yeah, nah, Qatar. And yes to Sportsbet, the easiest place to bet on the World Cup. Oh dear.
After the hooting sound, we heard a loud, deep groan call out, and then the groan changed into a few very deep, mumbling sounds, almost like it was trying to talk or make words, but it sounded like a bunch of nonsensical words. I again stood there in shock. Never in my life have I ever heard that sound. And the craziest thing was literally it sounded like it was 15 to 20 feet away when it occurred. We ran the rest of the way to my grandma's house, waking her up and telling her what happened. I then got my keys and left. Nothing else occurred as we drove out that place. I grew up in this area, and the only time I heard of something happening was when I was 10. So, me and both my uncles ran down the house shaking from head to toe. They explained that they were hunting late, and it got really dark on them, and they were beginning to walk. As they were walking, they saw a creature or animal begin to growl and chase them, but they couldn't see it. They were back-to-back shooting shotguns in the direction of this creature, which did nothing to scare it away, and it chased them all the way, and never once did they look back to see what it was. After my night from hell, I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone and would never return to camp in that area again. It has bothered me to this day, wondering what in the world took place, and what in the world were those creatures from hell. I'm a park ranger. My regular shift consists of handling the entrance booth, cleaning the park and assisting tourists and guests. One summer, one of my supervisors asks me if I'm willing to work overtime for a night shift. Me being a broke high school student would do anything to earn a bit of cash. I took the opportunity and was put on the night shift with a few other rangers. A few on patrol and a few near the entrance of the gate. I wasn't given much in terms of tools, a radio, a flashlight, and a notepad. My mobile phone was locked away in my locker as usual, and we weren't allowed to carry any sort of firearm. At 6 p.m. we'd usually close the park by this time, as no more guests were allowed through the main gate. The only exceptions were emergency services. I was stationed in the ranger station until I switched to the booth at 1 a.m. It was boring. You'd usually just sit in a small booth with a 180 dark-tinted windows and expect nothing. You'd hear semi-trucks go by every now and then, and those cicadas in the forest. The fog layers were usually thick. You could hardly see anything. There was barely anything you could do. I was so bored, so I went outside and shined my flashlight around randomly. And, in the glimpse of an eye, the light from my flashlight captured a human-y figure in the pine trees. I thought I was hallucinating because I was so sleepy. I took a brief pause to process what I had just encountered, and looked again, and the figure vanished completely. So I contacted one of the nearby rangers to investigate it, over the dead radio silence. A few minutes passed and the ranger finally arrived to investigate. He walked over and found nothing, no footprints, nothing. I sent out a be on the lookout call to rangers in the park, just in case the person may have run off. They searched the area, but found nothing, and told me I was just seeing things. I knew I wasn't because the figure was so real. I soon accepted that perhaps I was seeing things, and the rest of the night was eerie. The forest was completely silent, which was scary to say the least. It scared me to a point I wouldn't use the toilet for the entire night. Sunrise, and the day shift comes in. Me and the night shift crew head back into the ranger station and end our shift and clock in for the day. I ask one of the rangers which believes in the paranormal, and she mentions that 18 hikers/mountain climbers lost their lives during a 6.0 magnitude earthquake in the park. She told me it was probably one of the deceased, trying to make contact with me. It sent shivers down my spine. and still does when I think about it from time to time. From that night on, I would still take night shifts, but never encountered anything like that again.
Boys, it. Head home. School's over for the day. I'll see you when I'm back at home, I guess. See you then. Oh, here we are. Back at my apartment. Gang gang. Let's go. Press 2. Here we are. Unlock it. Lock it back up. Oh shit. Lock it back up, yo. What's tomorrow? Friday. Cool. Lucky me. My legs go in the morning, yo. Press play.
I am an East Tennessee native.
Oh, Brian, yo.
And have grown up going to the Smokies. I have also had a strange or seemingly paranormal experience while in the area. So my grandparents own a bunch of rental properties and cabins in Townsend and surrounding the Smokies for holidays, etc. And my extended family would always gather together at these cabins for the holidays. I'd had little things happen here and there, like feeling watched while playing in the woods growing up with my brothers and cousins, or hearing strange and human-sounding noises outside at night where there weren't any animals or predation. As I'm very aware and educated on the local wildlife of the Smokies, but nothing super substantial or scary enough that I actually experienced true terror or fear. Mostly just weird little things here and there. Some things being knocked off a table in the cabin or bumps in the night. Anyway, one Christmas around 2010, me and my twin brother were given a cabin to ourselves for the weekend, within a half-mile or so from the rest of the family cabins, and my grandparents' main cabin. We are both 19 at this point, so not little kids by any means. First night there, we drink and I fell asleep early downstairs on the couch, and he passes out in the other. They were walking. They began to hear whistles and strange noises coming from nearby bushes. My great-grandmother told my grandmother that maybe her dad was making those noises because he wanted to scare them. They ignored the noises and arrived to the relative's house. They stayed there for several hours, but decided to leave when it started to get dark. Again, walking in the same road, they began to hear the whistles, but increasingly closer. My grandmother shouted her husband's name, telling him to stop scaring them, that they knew it was him. The whistles stopped, and now they began to hear sounds like a woman who was suffering or screaming. That was enough for them. Then they started running towards the house. While running, they heard screams and whistles even more, and once they arrived, they found my great-grandfather deeply asleep. They awoke him and couldn't understand what just happened. They never heard the whistles or screams again. Years later, I read an article about Bigfoot encounters with people hearing whistles or a woman in distress, and I thought that perhaps it might have been what was scaring my grandmother. Besides that weird story, they regularly saw the strangest lights in the sky coming down the mountain. They thought they were witches, and my grandma was really scared to go out at night because of it. She and her family saw a lot of strange things that couldn't be explained back in those days. They knew every part of the share land, and even what kind of animals lived there. Here in Mexico we have many stories regarding giants that were killed by the Aztecs, or died during the wars with tribes. But for now, thanks for listening. My parents forced me into a church camping. It wasn't from any church.
Let's pause it. And, inside. Close it. See you guys in the morning. Just another day. Today's Friday. Go chill on the balcony. Gang gang. Press play.
Church, and I didn't want to be friends with the people there.
Have one for day.
My female cousin went too, so we had a nice conversation. The place was okay, but around it had a lake and a bridge to the forest to the other side of the lake. There was this weird air in the area around the camping place where we were at. I remember exploring it, and there was a very bad energy there. Ripped clothes, campfires that looked old, black trash bags hanging in the trees, all that in the forest around the camping area. At one of the last 3 nights there, they finally lit a campfire for us to be around. Me and my cousins were talking for a moment, and then we remained quiet for 5 minutes. I looked away into the forest, and there was a little lake splitting us from there. Suddenly I saw a man running around the lake in the forest area. He was wearing a white, huge Jesus kind of cloth and using no shoes. He ran very fast, and I watched him and felt very scared. I looked at my cousin, and then she looked at me spooked. I asked her if she saw something, and she described exactly what I saw. We got that creepy feeling from it, and nobody from the church believed us. Even to this day I can remember the man, who was tall in white robes and very pale, running on bare feet, giving off this awful vibe. I live in New York. Recently, I went upstate to the Catskill Mountains with my girlfriend, her younger brother, and their mother. They own land up there, and my girlfriend's father built a cabin. I went there on July 9th and got back to the city on July 12th. We spent 3 nights in the mountain. During the time I was there, nothing unusual happened at all, until the last night. We swam in a lake nearby. Funnily enough, it was called Crystal Lake. We also cooked a lot of food, and overall just had a nice time. One night I did vomit after swimming. However, other than that, nothing strange happened at all, until the 3rd night. To give some backstory, the cabin is great. Has bedrooms and all that, a kitchen, even a ping pong table. However, it doesn't have a shower nor bathroom. You pee in the woods and poop in a bucket, and shower with the outdoor shower they have. The outdoor shower is pretty much a shower head on a huge metal container. You can adjust the temperature with a dial. It has wooden walls surrounding it for privacy. However, the side on the left is completely open to the forest. You stand on a wet rock and shower. This was my first time showering outdoors ever, and I really enjoyed it. At times I would just stand under the water and look out onto the forest. Every time I showered it was dark after 10 p.m. The only light I had was a lantern and my iPhone flashlight. However, there was no real need for it, since the lantern was pretty strong. On the 3rd night, knowing it would be my last time showering outdoors for a while, I decided to shower pretty late. My girlfriend was asleep, and so were her brother and mum. It was around 2 because I checked my phone before going in. I walked to the shower, trying to open the door quietly so that I didn't wake anyone. Eventually, I got there and began showering, and realized midway that I forgot to bring my shampoo. So I decided I would just do what I always did and just stare out into the forest. It was beautiful, and even though it was dark, the lantern lit up most of my surroundings. After 15 minutes of just idly staring into the forest, I started to become uncomfortable. Not because of the water temperature or anything, just physically uncomfortable. I felt like how I felt when I shut the hallway light and ran upstairs into the pitch dark. This hadn't happened to me at all. All the showers I took, I never once felt this way. I tried ignoring it, but eventually it became too much. As I went to turn off the shower, the feeling completely went away. I decided I'd stay in the shower. When I looked back at the forest, I noticed a patch of moss on the tree closest to me, which was odd because it was the tree nearest to me. Even though it was the closest tree, I still couldn't see it properly because I couldn't get the lantern wet. It stays at the entrance of the shower stall area, so the tree is pretty much in the dark. I focused more on the tree until my eyes got irritated from the water constantly hitting them. I rubbed my eyes, and just as I lowered my hands from my face did I see a tall figure walk away in front of the tree. No facial features or anything, probably because it was in the pitch dark. When this happened, I walked backwards and turned around to get my clothes and run away. When I turned around, I slipped on a patch of grass and hit my back against the rock I showered on. I felt lightheaded, but fine. I got up, gathered my stuff, and sped-walked back to the cabin. The next morning as we were packing to leave, I hadn't told anyone about what I'd seen or experienced. My back didn't have any bruises nor scrapes or anything, so I thought it was all a dream, until my girlfriend told me that I woke her up a bit when I got back into bed last night. I still didn't tell anyone what I saw. Before we left, I told my girlfriend I left a sock near the shower area, and told her I must have dropped it on the way back and that I needed to fetch it. I went to the shower and looked at the tree. There was no moss on it. It was completely gone. All brown, not even a speck of green. Just some grey parts on it. I literally said out loud, "Wow," as I stared at it. And that's it. Nothing crazy. Life happens. No weird experiences or encounters. Just plain old normal life. I do wonder what it could have been. I'm Garrett, a Western Paiute who grew up moving because my dad spent his career in the Forest Service. My original home is one of California's largest Indian reservations. I've been a hunter and overall enjoyed spending my time in the wilderness since I could remember walking. I started hunting big game at 10, without a hunting license until 14, because it was legal on the reservation, while living with my family for the summer until I go back to college in fall. I had the idea, which my dad and brother promptly agreed to go on an 11-mile backpacking trip in high country. We spent the next few hours packing our bags with what we would need for 48 hours, but potentially 72 just to be ready. The next day we drove the 70 miles to the end of the last road in the area and began our hike. Excited to break my boots in and see the lake, I took the lead, and by 4 p.m. we made it to our spot, sitting at 8,000 feet elevation. We swam in the lake to wash the sweat off, and then used the sun to dry off before it got dark. Mind you, we are in the northwestern USA, so at this elevation it could still freeze at night, even in July. It was a peaceful and an awesome place 81 miles from the closest town of 3,000 people, with the nearest city being 181 miles south. After we swam, dried off and ate dinner, I was ready to sleep along with both my dad and my brother. After spending the next hours looking at the satellites orbiting Earth and the stars with the occasional quasars, I was in my hammock drifting off to sleep. However, I didn't get to sleep that night, not even a minute, and I'm glad I didn't. I heard what sounded like 3 people walking on the boulders about 50 yards in front of us, right on the other side of the thicket. I'm 20 years old, 180 pounds, and 6'2", along with being a college athlete, so I was cocky at first. I told my dad we have people near us, and to be ready. This is a weird place to see anyone, at all, ever. However, passing midnight is something that raised a red flag. He listened to me, but was asleep 5 minutes later, and my brother never woke up. I decided to keep watch. I knew what I heard, so I kept my .38 revolver in my right hand with me, while still in my hammock. It's loaded and prepared for self-defense. All of a sudden,
Finally,
it
about
got real.
time.
I heard
Someone who has a
someone
gun
or something
in these
charging me
stories.
from the thicket. So thinking I wouldn't have time to turn on my headlamp, I cocked my revolver and pointed towards the sound. While praying for protection in my head, nothing came out the thicket. It went silent, and again being too scared to sleep, I got up like a dumbass without my boots on to try and find what it was. I didn't find anything, not even tracks. So I got more wood, kept the fire burning and tried to warm up. It was 32 degrees with wet soil, so my feet were freezing. Right as the fire stoked up, I heard what sounded like a man run across the river. I looked over there with my headlamp but didn't see anything. Then I asked myself, who the hell would run across 4 feet of running water up here at night? Just because I felt like I was being watched, I looked back across and this time saw big green eyes and grey-looking skin that was see-through. None of it made sense. It was at least 7 feet tall and didn't look alive, let alone human. So I prayed to the Most High and asked for protection. For the next 3 hours I heard rocks being thrown in the river and never desired to sleep until the next afternoon when I was home. I don't know what it was, but I'm glad I prayed. I don't think my pistol would have helped. I asked my aunt about it, and she said it was most likely a spirit who for some reason was angry, or maybe a more sinister entity created after a war or some kind of violence that took place in the area. I still don't know for sure. I will go further up into the next lake. That's another 13 miles.